There are voices, there are regions, there are cultures, subcultures that may not have a complete representation in the AI systems today. So, how do we ensure that as we are advancing on the AI journey globally, we are not leaving anyone behind?
AI has no shortage of power, funding, or media hype. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Most of that power isn't being used to solve the problems that affect real people. It's optimizing apps, boosting profits, or automating things that we are already working fine.
Why do you think there is such a gap between AI potential and how it's actually being used?
The data that we have is not fully represented, fully inclusive of the global voices. The systems aren't built with that responsibility.
So, how do we put AI back for the common good? How do we build systems that help vulnerable communities, improve health, advance education, and tackle the world's toughest challenges?
I like to think about it in four dimensions, what we call RISE AI: responsible, inclusive, safe, and ethical AI.
Today's guest, Professor Nitesh Chawla, is at the forefront of answering those questions. He's a leading researcher in AI, data science, and network science at the University of Notre Dame. His work is pushing the boundaries of what AI can do, not just technically, but ethically and socially. His research is deeply interdisciplinary with partners across academia, policy, and global communities.
Professor Chawla, welcome. Thank you so much for agreeing to join us today. So, to start off, I would like to ask you a question. What's the biggest missed opportunity in how we're using AI today?
First, thank you so much for hosting me and inviting me. It's always a pleasure to come back to this beautiful campus at Vinny University. And thanks for hosting the podcast as well today. So, what's the biggest missed opportunity of AI today? I believe there could be examples of missed opportunities, but an important missed opportunity and yet an opportunity is to how make the AI development, AI tools to be more globally inclusive, right? There are voices, there are regions, there are cultures, subcultures that may not have a complete representation in the AI systems today. So, how do we ensure that as we are advancing on the AI journey globally, we are not leaving anyone behind? We are as inclusive as we can, not just in data, as inclusive as we can in the models that we develop, as inclusive as we can in the availability of these AI models and systems, and as inclusive as we can to ensure that we are sensitive to these systems, to the ultimate user consumer of these systems. So that's where, as we have been quite focused as an industry. When I talk about it as an industry, I'm talking about both the private sector and the universities globally on the building the greatest, best algorithms and systems that we can. I think it's important to pause now and ask ourselves, are we building it with the right responsibility, right governance, right inclusive principles as we progress in this journey? So I don't want that us to be thinking 5 years from now, even a year from now, that we missed the opportunity to do right. So that's where it's a missed opportunity today, but it shouldn't be a missed opportunity tomorrow.
So, talking about inclusive, because we also hear a lot about it, about ethical AI, inclusive AI, and responsible AI. But when we look at where AI is deployed, most of it still serve for commercial goals, but not human needs. Why do you think there is such a gap between AI potential and how it's actually being used?
I think there is definitely deployment that serves human needs as well. We are seeing several aspects of AI applications and interfaces that are for the benefit of society at large, that are demonstrating use in health and medicine, that are demonstrating use in discovery of the next best material as fast as we can, or compound, for powering some of the economic engines or economic well-being. there is use of that. But at the same time, yes, you're correct that there is a big domination of the commercial dialogue, the way it is, that, certain organizations, sectors are controlling a lot of AI narrative as we hear it, as we see it, certain large investments as we hear it and we see it. And you mentioned responsibility, inclusive, and ethical AI. The way I sort of break it down is when we, so let's sort of think about it from all those dimensions. Responsibility, the big challenge I believe we have is how do we define responsibility? Whose responsibility it is? Is it the person who's collecting the data and providing the data? Is it the system that's collecting the data? Is it a data limitation? Is it the individual developing the AI algorithms? Is it the AI algorithms now must have a responsible sensibility in them? Or is it the user of these AI systems? We often talk about responsible AI, but it's a shifting responsibility. It's a continuum. And even if you think about the AI algorithm, there is no mathematical objective function for responsibility that we can say you can optimize on responsibility by solving this objective function. There isn't. So we have to really frame it, right? Inclusivity is this AI system inclusive of the voices, data? I'll give you an example that someone was sharing it with me. There was this discussion workshop forum in Kenya, and one individual at that workshop forum, they were talking about their experiences with using some of these language models, right? I wouldn't name the company they were using, but examples could be like ChatGPT or Gemini or Cloud and others, right? One of these many publicly available AI interfaces or large language model interfaces, and the woman translated her what she intended to ask from Swahili to English, and she said, "My baby is not in play." And the chatbot suggested different games that she could play with the baby. What she actually meant, and what that meant in that local Swahili cultural context in Kenya, that my baby is not doing well in my womb. Not that the baby needs recommendations for play. So it goes back to your first question on a missed, failed opportunity to engage, which means that the data that we have is not fully represented, fully inclusive of the global voices. The systems aren't built with that responsibility. And then the third aspect as well is safety. I like to think about it in 4 dimensions, right? What we call RISE AI, responsible, inclusive, safe, and ethical AI. Safety is, what guarantees do we have on the predictability of these systems, on the performance of these systems? Would they be simply stochastic parrots that, there's randomness and there is no guarantee that I would always get the same answer, same behavior, same response? We need to we need to really think about the safety principles that we can attach. Finally, it's ethical AI. Here again, we have to be clear about what are the virtues, what are the qualities, what are the ethics these systems should be responsible towards or responsive to. I like to think of it more as, can we incorporate some of these virtues within these systems? Because ethics as a construct, as we think about these systems, are they responsive to ethics in Vietnam or Southeast Asia or Asia or in Africa or in Europe with its regulations or in the US? What are those frameworks, right? Versus we could start thinking about what are some of the good virtues we want these systems to have, be responsible towards, be functioning like. What are some of the guardrails we can imagine which are practical and pragmatic, etc. So those are some of these elements I like to think about as we say, RISE AI, responsible, inclusive, safe, and ethical AI.
Oh, it's RISE.
RISE, yeah.
Pretty nice acronyms, actually.
Yeah.
You were talking about data and how we can be inclusive with it, not just data, but also the algorithm you make. So most AI systems are only as good as the data we feed them. That data is messy, biased, or missing altogether. So how do we move from data-driven AI to justice-driven AI?
Justice-driven AI.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great question, right? So yes, data is the foundational backbone. A lot of these models have been data hungry in terms of the raw data, and even they have relied on how do we annotate, label this data, whatever those annotations may be, and how they may be relevant. So absolutely. And yes, the data, as in any historical consideration of AI or machine learning, we are always limited by the data. It could be missing, it could be poor quality, it could be unreliable, all that's given. Now, justice-driven AI, I feel that's a complex, loaded question because, as we think about justice, we're thinking about the use, right? And as we're thinking about the use, if we don't know what data was fed into these systems, how do we guarantee that it'll be used? That what are some of the guidelines the systems should adhere to? I mean, as we think about justice, we think about the law, we think about the regulation, we think about even the constitution that may have informed framing of the law and regulation. And so we can read it, we can understand it, and we can speak to whether justice was done to an individual life. Now, in terms of these AI systems, what is that book of law that they have been trained on and they're supposed to be behaving in to achieve the notion of justice? We may not necessarily know what data was fed into them. We may not necessarily know and so how do we define that in the first place? I think it's a difficult. We have to, I guess, make it responsive to if you're imagining this world of agentic AI and Gen AI, and folks are talking about all kinds of adjectives you can attach to AI. If the basic human virtue and principle that we want to apply to these systems is the idea of justice, the way I may assume what is justice to me, what is justice to you as a society, I feel the same rules at the end of the day should and must apply to these AI systems if they are going to be an accompaniment to us in our society, in our day-to-day work, or replacement for us in certain scenarios. So I believe the same principles should be applicable. Again, it's a conjecture.
Should we be asking not just what in the data, but who is not in it and why?
Absolutely, right? Who is not in it and why? As I said, a society is formed, a lot of us, we organize ourselves, and whether it's certain laws that organize us, or religion that organizes us, or policies or regulations, or just the virtue of what do we owe each other as a society, right? Could we imagine the same kinds of, so we assume that I see you, you see me, I hear you, you hear me, and we are present, we are represented, and we hope that the society is inclusive of all of us. And if the AI system is now having a seat next to me on this table, let's assume, and the AI system sensibilities come from the data it has seen, would it be? And if the sensibilities don't represent me, am I excluded now in the dialogue? So yes.
You know, for building deep collaborations across disciplines, health, education, sociology, public policy, but academia still tends to reward silos. What makes interdisciplinary AI work not just possible, but essential?
I've built a significant aspect of my research program founded on the principles of interdisciplinarity or convergence research. And I do believe that if we are embracing on some of the toughest challenges that the society wants us to tackle as scholars, as teachers, as researchers, as practitioners, How do we advance our goals and make the society a better place for everyone? None of those challenges raise their hand and say, hey, we are a computer science, I'm a computer scientist, that we are a computer science challenge, or we are a sociology challenge, or we are a health challenge, right? Today, there's folks are thinking about how to integrate and form a digital twin of a human to create better understanding of our disease states, of our musculoskeletal system, of our physiological states, etc., to help us care and find advanced human well-being, right? So none of these, or do you think about sustainability, right? It's not just sustainability doesn't say, hey, I'm a challenge for policymakers, or I'm a challenge for science, or I'm a challenge for environmentalists. It's a collective challenge, or poverty, so pick on any sustainable development goal of the UN, that the UN challenge for the top 10 or 20 such goals. So if we want to tackle those challenges, we must bridge disciplines. We must think about how do we, as I like to think of them as wicked problems that need solving, we must think about a convergent way of doing research that brings disciplines together. And why I say those are exciting, even to your point of being in silos, a lot of my adventures along this multidisciplinary research or interdisciplinary research have led us to think about foundational or fundamental machine learning AI challenges. That's led us to publish great papers in our core machine learning or AI or data science conferences and journals. And we could have only this, those papers came from the inspiration we found in the problems that we were trying to solve, which were at the interface of disciplines. So I do believe that we can continue to make disciplinary advances even while working on interdisciplinary research areas. That's not to say that some folks who want to continue working on the disciplinary lens or focused on just foundational things and not interested in interdisciplinary work or applications work or translational work, there's a room for everyone in this research paradigm. It's critical that we keep pushing those fundamental research in each discipline, independent of interdisciplinarity. It's equally critical that we work on interdisciplinarity interfaces, which inspires us to even think about new problems we need to solve at the core discipline. And it's equally important to work on societal challenges that inspire us to bridge disciplines and do translational research. So I believe a university is a beautiful harmony of all of these things happening in conjunction. It is that wonderful orchestra that's playing where every instrument, every player of that instrument has a note that they are responding to. And collectively, it just makes a wonderful place of research, scholarship, and teaching. And that's what I do genuinely believe that at the University of Notre Dame, we have been for the last 17, 18 years now, or 20 years actually now, there is an opportunity for being inspired to work on these global problems while pushing our fundamental research.
So, in your point of view, what will happen if we design AI solutions with the community, not just for them?
I think that's a great question, right? And I'll tell you an experience on aging, right? Successful aging with an independent living facility. This was many years ago. I remember walking with my PhD student, and we had built this app using personalized machine learning algorithms and all that jazz. And where we said that, hey, we're going to change the way aging happens. We're going to personalize to an individual. They're going to love it. We walked in, and these were independent living facilities where these folks were living in, and then we made the presentation to them. They hated it. And we were like, why would you hate it? It's the best thing look at the beauty of the algorithm. And it didn't matter. And then we left the room, and my PhD student was like, it was my PhD's body of work that, what's going to happen if they, we can't validate and stuff like that. I went back to talk to them. I said, hey, I know you didn't quite like it. Could you tell me why? They gave me reasons. And then as I left that room, I realized my mistake was we walked in thinking we knew what they needed. So we were doing it to them. They became an experiment for us. And for what we were trying to build, we had to do it with them. To and with are two very different things. So then I learned from that experience, and I hired a design thinker, hired an anthropologist. We went back. I said, give us a chance again, please. And they did. And then we changed the entire framework. We built it with them. We built it with their participation. They saw a piece of them in it. And we learned how they think, how they look at things. We learned about the challenges they may be facing, where the app is not quite aware. We figured out how our entire AI system at that time could become more cognizant of their challenge. How this AI system could meet them in their journey, to whatever their journey of wellness might be. Each one is different. Each one starts at a different place. And each one may end at a different place, depending on what they desire to their quality of the journey. So that was a very informative experience. So yes, as we are building and deploying these systems, we must, absolutely must think about the participatory design. We must think about how do we bring, again, going back to the first question that you asked me, how do we make it more inclusive? Because then it'll become a missed opportunity.
In industry, we measured AI success in clicks, profits, and conversations. But in your work, success looks different. It's about health outcomes, equity, and resilience. How should we be measuring success in AI for the common good?
I believe one may measure an industry success based on, say, number of sales, consumer engagement, revenue earned, every metric you can imagine. That sort of goes down to what is the bottom line or the top line impact. However, human lives don't operate on top line, bottom line, right? Common good essentially is not, is what is the collective, the notion of beneficence, as I like to think about that. Can we achieve maximal benefit without doing harm, right, to individuals, to society? And is it the way I have tried to embrace it in my research is, can we demonstrate if there was a positive impact on one individual, five individuals, 10, society, community, etc. Like, for example, when we did I gave you the example of senior aging, we could measure it on the basis of, the depression scores and things like that, the impact it had. We are doing a project in Mexico right now where we are working with families battling pediatric cancer, and how do we make the adverse outcomes fewer and lesser, right, at the end of the day, as they pursue the treatment. We can measure that in terms of impact on human life. And then as well as, I do believe that while revenue, and the examples you gave of clickstream revenue, there's an instant capture of that value. If you show me something and I click, I immediately clicked, right? If you go to Netflix, you watch a movie or you don't watch a movie, there's instant gratification, instant realization of value to the consumer and to the company, right? If I don't like a movie, I won't watch it. If I like a movie, I'll watch it. I get something on Amazon in the US, and if I don't like it, I send it back. But if I want something 24 hours later, it's at my doorstep. So the speed of gratification, the speed of realization is fast. The challenge is when we think about societal impact or framing common good, the speed of realization is not instantaneous. The speed of realization is not tomorrow. It's a longer span. All right. Even if you imagine that you were trying to do a health journey, or someone you know was embracing a health and well-being journey, or had to sort of break some habits, break some behaviors, it takes time. It's not that you snap and your habits and behavior change, or you've clicked somewhere and suddenly a transformative life event has happened. These things take time. These things take multiple nudges to form a complete story. So that's where these evaluations must embrace a longer term. I often think about, as we conduct our AI research, we should have patience, and we should be able to embrace the idea of doing a longitudinal study of our AI innovation, and not just simply say, I built this algorithm, I measured accuracy, or I measured ROC, or I measured these metrics, and I wrote a paper where I show my method is better than 10 other methods, and voila, work's done. That's the easy part. The real work is done when we have taken our innovation, tested them with partners, with developers, with community partners, with community organizations, had their voices in, evaluated how those changes work, how the solutions work in the public space, collected real data, gone back, iterated, fixed what we had to fix, again gone back into that public solution space. All of that is a journey, and all of that needs to be measured. We have to become patient in our publication cycle to be able to realize it. Right now, we are in that culture of more instant gratification with publications as well, and that has to change.
Yeah, I think like that is almost like the mindset of Asian countries. Mostly like everything fast. We need to rank higher, faster, higher. Like everything is fast. So I want to talk about the future a little. In a world increasingly shaped by algorithms, what's your hope for how AI evolves over the next decade?
So the world increasingly shaped by algorithms, and I agree, that's a fair statement, right?
Yeah.
That's a good statement and a fair statement. Because our behaviors, our attitudes are shaped by the information we see, right? We are gamified on social media platforms, whether what video we should see, what's the friend recommendation we should have, what product we should buy, what reviews we should be looking at, what interactions we may have with the LLM agent. You know, this thing about my own AI avatar I may leave. All of these are going to shape today and even the future. If I have an AI avatar that I leave behind, so I keep living, I'm immortal with my AI avatar, right? But so I think that's, and what's a slightly more concerning thing, to me at least, is, let's say before ChatGPT was the first one to come out, like, you know, it was Google's paper on attention is all you need that formed an initial foundation for a lot of this research. Um, the um, the data that was fed into building that language model, right, GPT 3.0 or whatever that version was called, was data from the internet. But let's assume that most of that data, let's forget deep fakes and things like that for a second. The majority of data was content created by humans. And now we have content being generated by these language models and going back into the training data because they're being made available, whether it's, you know, folks are doing different forms of writing, art, music, what have you. So what is machine versus human generated data would be interesting. So imagine the world where the training data now is also machine generated. So it's not just and the algorithms are being trained on this self-generated data as well. So yes, we're going to be increasingly be shaped by the algorithms. And the question is, what future do we want to see, right? What future do we want to, the boat, but the train's left the station, it's moving fast. What kind of guardrails we may want to put around, what kind of understanding, what kind of use cases. We need to make sure that it goes back to the responsible, inclusive, safe, and ethical AI principles, because this technological industrial revolution is here to stay. It's here to transform us. It's here for us to rethink how we educate, how we think about pedagogy, right? From K-12, elementary school to middle school, high school to colleges. It's about the workplace. It's about professional life. It's about research. It's about everything. It's here. And things are going to be shaped by these algorithms. Things are going to be shaped by the data that these algorithms will also create alongside us, alongside the humans. And I don't know in 5 years, 10 years from now what it would look like, but I'm excited. I'm optimistic because I do believe these could be transformative for so many potential of good applications. But at the same time, I want us to be contemplative. I want us to be careful, especially, because with great power comes great responsibility in these AI algorithms. And we are in a position as academics, professors, researchers, practitioners, users of these technologies to ensure that we are introducing good RISE, responsible, inclusive, safe, ethical principles around these algorithms. Safety and security is going to be paramount. There are examples of this, right? I often think about, at least in the US, I'm not sure if I'm sure it's in Vietnam as well, you take a medicine or a vaccine, and the pharmacist gives you, and the doctor has prescribed it, the pharmacist gives you that medicine, and at the back, there's a list of all possible side effects, right? Or there's a TV ad that happens in the US where it says you see amazingly flowers blossoming and people looking happy, that there's this, if you take this medicine, life is going to change. And then at the end of the ad, there's this fast-talking voice that says, and the side effects are blah, 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 and you may die, right? But the good exceeds the side effects. Could we apply that same framework to these AI systems, to these algorithms where, this is the joy, and blah, 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 these are the side effects, right? Let's be cautious. Or, so that sort of is an understanding of what these systems are. Would you step into when you buy a car, right? You look at the safety ratings. You're familiar with that idea, or anything else, right? We put seat belts that weren't existing, decades ago. We put seat belts because they make us safe. We didn't question it. We didn't say we're not going to drive cars because it causes accidents. We embraced it with the security principles. We embraced it when, side crash, front crash became better. Loss of life with car accidents was reduced because the cars became safer, right? And so why can't we deploy and apply the same thinking, right? Let's embrace this technology, the gifts of this technology, but let's also be aware of what are the RISE principles we should be implementing or framing this technology with.
So what do you think is the role of university in leading and not just reacting to AI movements?
I think the universities are the most beautifully positioned to lead in this dialogue globally. And the reason being, private enterprises or for-profit sectors, if you will. They're for-profit sectors, right? There's value that they are trying to give to the shareholders, right? There's values that they are trying to unlock as engines of growth, as economic engines, as entrepreneurial mindset. They're launching new products, etc. The universities have to and must start taking on these tougher questions. The universities have to start looking at these longitudinal studies and things about AI systems. The universities should start thinking about, deliberating about what are the RISE AI dimensions we should be applying and how. What are some of the more foundational interdisciplinary questions we should be asking? And what are some of those ethical AI algorithms and how we should be developing them? Because one thing is for certain, the universities will not have all the compute that these tech companies have. It's impossible to make billions and billions of dollars of tech investment. It won't happen. The universities may not have all that data. Right? Imagine the data that Meta or Facebook has, what X has, what OpenAI has, what other data companies have. The universities don't have access to it. So should we be computing and building with them and building bigger, faster, bigger, massive models? Or should we simply say, hey, that's the domain of industry. Let's think about how can we do more with less? How can we think about these pressing, complex questions that are perplexing us or that are wicked problems society needs to solve? Let's think about sustainability. Let's think about smart health. Let's think about making sure every question that you have asked me, I think is a research question in themselves. These are the things that I genuinely believe the universities should be leading. But at the same time, that doesn't say that the private enterprises shouldn't be doing. So there is an opportunity to have this public-private partnerships that the universities and industry, government makes the investment, and we say, okay, these are march forward on these questions, these directions, etc.
Such an insightful point of view. Finally, for the last question, for a young student who might be listening to this, someone who wants to work on AI that matters, what is your advice?
I mean, to the young students, first of all, I'll tell the young students, right, that we have an obligation to the young students as professors to ensure our curriculum, our pedagogy is responsive to these changes and movements of AI, right? So first of all, we owe it to them, right, to the young students, that we are preparing them for the world and the profession that's going to await them when they graduate, whether it's 2, 1, 3, 4 years, 5 years from now, right, whenever they graduate. And then second is, they would be young students who would be enamored by let's go work for these big technology companies, and yes, as long as we are prepared to do that. But at the same time, as universities, we have to also prepare these young students within our curriculum to start thinking about what could go wrong with the next algorithm they write at these corporations. What could go wrong with the systems that they may develop? What are the side effects? So my advice to these young students would be whatever path you may choose, and let's assume, again, it's a biased advice to folks in the tech or computer science, or folks building these MLAI systems, but irrespective, right? We need to be aware of, think about what could go wrong. Think about the world that you're going to be creating with this that may be shaped by the algorithms, or maybe shaped by the algorithm you may develop as a young student. How do you want that world to be shaped? And that's the fundamental. Doesn't matter what career path you may take. You may go join a university, become a teacher, scholar. You may join an industry. You may join a government agency. You may join a not-for-profit. Pursue whatever path your heart tells you to pursue. But whatever you do, think about what world is going to be shaped by these algorithms and by systems, and how it will be shaped, and what role you have to actually do a more positive, maximizing the beneficence of these technologies if you are in that seat. So do the right thing, pursue what excites you, but do the right thing as you are pursuing your career interests.
Thank you so much for this powerful conversation.
Thank you.
And also thank you again for joining me.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you very much.